humanity. Professor Daniel Carter was a man of science, logic, and reason. He taught psychology at a prestigious university and was renowned for his research on human behavior and the power of the mind. A firm atheist, Daniel believed that faith in God was merely a crutch for the weak, a way for people to explain what they could not understand. His lectures often included sharp critiques of religious beliefs, which earned him the admiration of his students and the ire of the devout. One evening, after a particularly heated debate with a religious colleague, Daniel drove home in the pouring rain, scoffing at the idea of divine retribution. "If there is a God," he muttered to himself, "let him show himself." Just then, a blinding flash of light engulfed his car, and everything went black. Daniel awoke to find himself in a strange village, one that seemed to belong to another time. The cobblestone streets were lined with quaint cottages, and the villagers, dressed in old-fashioned clothing, went about their lives with an eerie calm. No one seemed surprised by his presence, but they all regarded him with a peculiar mix of pity and fear. He soon discovered that the village had no name and was not on any map. Despite his best efforts, there was no way out. The roads all led back to the village, and the surrounding forest seemed endless. His watch and phone were both dead, and there was no sense of time. Desperate and confused, Daniel sought answers, but the villagers only told him, "You will leave when the time is right." Days passed, and Daniel began to realize that something was profoundly wrong. The village was a paradox, a place where time seemed to stand still. The villagers never aged, and nothing ever changed. There was no night or day, only a perpetual twilight that cast long shadows over everything. His 5 days in the village felt like an eternity. Chapter 3: The Return. On the morning of the 5th day, Daniel awoke to find a path leading out of the village. Without hesitation, he followed it, running as fast as he could until he emerged into the familiar world he had known. Relieved, he rushed back to his home, eager to return to his life and prove to himself that it had all been a bad dream. But the world had changed. Daniel soon discovered that 50 years had passed in the time he had been gone. His once modern home was now old and abandoned, overgrown with weeds. The university where he had taught was still there, but it had changed beyond recognition. The names of the professors were unfamiliar, and there was no record of him ever having worked there. He searched for his family, only to learn that his wife, Emily, had remarried decades ago after he had been declared dead. His children, now elderly, had moved on, creating lives of their own. The few people who remembered him were shocked to see him, unchanged and still in his 30s. They regarded him with a mix of awe and fear, whispering rumors of a man who had cheated time itself. Daniel realized that he had been cursed. The 5 days he had spent in the village had cost him 50 years of his life. Worse, he had not aged a day, while everyone he had known had grown old or passed away. His skepticism, his defiance of the divine, had brought him to this fate. He tried to start over, but he was an outcast in a world that had left him behind. His knowledge was outdated, his skills obsolete. The few friends he made were disturbed by his unchanging appearance. He watched as generations grew old and died, while he remained forever young, a living reminder of the passage of time. In his solitude, Daniel came to understand the true nature of his punishment. He had been given eternity, not as a blessing, but as a curse. The God he had denied had shown him the power of time, and now he was condemned to wander the earth, a man out of time, forever searching for a place to belong. Years passed, and Daniel wandered from place to place, searching for meaning in his endless existence. He studied theology, philosophy, and mysticism, hoping to find a way to atone for his arrogance. But no matter how much he learned, he could not escape the gnawing emptiness that plagued him. One day, he returned to the village, hoping to find answers. The villagers greeted him as if he had never left, their faces unchanged by the passage of time. They led him to the center of the village, where an old man sat waiting. The man, who seemed to know everything about Daniel, spoke to him in a calm, measured voice. "You sought proof of God, and now you have it. But proof is not faith, and knowledge is not wisdom. You are a man who cannot age, yet you are bound by time. Your punishment is not just your immortality, but your separation from those you love. Only when you accept what you cannot understand, when you find faith in what you cannot see, will you be free. With those words, the village began to fade, and Daniel found himself alone in the forest. He knew then that his journey was far from over. He would wander the earth, not in search of proof, but in search of peace. The man who had once mocked the divine now sought it, hoping that one day, he would find the redemption he so desperately needed. Later he realized his mistakes and visited the church, prayed to God and asked for forgiveness. He also visited the mosque and prayed to God. A striking light came from heaven unto him, and God forgave him after he has realized that he is the supreme God who created the heaven and the earth. Daniel Carter's name became a legend, a story told by those who had met the man who never aged. Some believed he was a saint, others a cursed soul. But Daniel himself knew the truth. He was neither. He was simply a man who had been given the gift of time and the burden of eternity, a man who had learned that there are some things beyond understanding, and that faith, in the end, is not about proof, but about acceptance.